Well, good day everyone. My name is John Foley, and today I'm going to do an analysis of how the constitutional patriots work closely with the Russian disinformation campaign and how we as Americans need to be aware of this threat posed by both entities. Okay, so today we're going to talk about two main militia groups, the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters, and about how they're not really constitutional patriots. They're really a white nationalist and neo-Confederate organization. And I'll point out the picture here coming from the Three Percenters, which shows the Union soldier as the tyrannical government and the constitutional patriots as the Confederate soldier. So that kind of, in a nutshell, tells you where they land in their ideology. And another important thing is to know that they started and organized immediately following the election of President Obama because they couldn't stand to see a black man as president. Okay, so let's talk about the Oath Keepers. They generally tend to be former military, also current police. There's actually current military members who belong to this group, and they basically advocate armed resistance to the federal government of their interpretation of the Second Amendment. They also carefully cultivate a public image, and they've been involved in many of the armed standoffs you see around the country. Okay, let's talk about the Three Percenters. This is another radical paramilitary group that pledges armed resistance against any, I stress, any attempt to rein in gun ownership. And they're known to have adherents and supporters that are linked to threats and violence. So they tend to be much more dangerous than the Oath Keepers. Now, they also are organized much more looser than the Oath Keepers, and they tend to resemble more of an insurgent group or a terrorist entity. And they also allow felons in their ranks, unlike supposedly the Oath Keepers don't allow felons. Three Percenters have much more ties to violent individuals. Okay, so getting into the Russian ties to these militia groups, I want to talk about reflexive control. Reflexive control is a Soviet and then later a Russian military concept of deception operations. Reflexive control is defined as a means of conveying to an opponent specially prepared information to incline him to voluntarily make predetermined decisions desired by the initiator of the action. And again, it's basically for deception operations and for disinformation. The reflexive control occurs when the controlling entity conveys motives and reasons that cause a target audience to reach a desired decision while the perpetrator maintains secrecy about their goals. So here's a group, No War with Russia. You can see it's from a group called Pursuit of Happiness, taken right out of the Declaration of Independence. So it has a automatic appeal to these constitutional patriot crowd individuals. So perfect meme to get their message across to these groups. So basically this shows how Russia supports these various militia groups, because using reflexive control, Russia would convey to these ultra-conservative groups specially prepared information to incline them to voluntarily make predetermined attitudes that the U.S. government is their enemy. Deception and disinformation has grown in these fertile fields of ultra-conservatives. This is a great example of how the Three Percenters got used by the Russians, and they had no problem with it. At least the Three Percenters had no problem because they actually really love Vladimir Putin. But they basically take the topic of Sharia law, and you have to remember the Three Percenters absolutely hate Muslims, and they love to put out hateful messages about Islam and also disinformation. And so the Russians used this and pushed it over into their circles, talking about a quote Putin speech about Sharia law. Now, total disinformation because, again, Putin never made this speech. It's all made up. You can actually go to the website and look up Russian transcripts of the president's speeches. But basically, Russia recognizes Islam as one of the three officially recognized religions. First is Christian Orthodoxy, then Islam and Buddhism. So Putin would never make a speech that hostile to Islam. It just wouldn't happen. So here's another disinformation piece put out by the Russians that the Oath Keepers gladly, with glee, actually put on their web page. And it was basically an article attacking the 4th Infantry Division out of Fort Carson, Colorado, that their 3rd Brigade went to Poland and did an exercise. And the Oath Keepers put forward on their webpage this Russian article attacking this training exercise as a dangerous escalation. And apparently the Russians were the only voice of reason. And again, the Oath Keepers were all good with this. And you go down and it's totally against our U.S. military involvement in protecting Eastern Europe, which is one of the reasons why we should never ever trust the Oath Keepers, because they've proven by this nonsense that they don't deserve any respect as a group. Okay, we can't talk about militias without talking about conspiracy theories. And the Russians love to stoke conspiracy theories among the militia groups. And one of their main voices has been through Alex Jones and all his nonsense he puts out there. And they do this basically to encourage anger towards our federal government. Now, one of the main targets of this anger has always been the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA. I mean, think about it. The Russians encouraging people to hate the one group designed to help our citizens in time of natural disaster. That's quite sinister of them. And the fact that militias have joined this anti-FEMA conspiracy is absolutely appalling. And then they also go on and attack any kind of Pentagon plans that deal with things going on in the country. And they make up wild conspiracy about re-education camps or concentration camps. And then there's the infamous UN takeover of the United States. They push their New World Order propaganda and oppose literally anything that involves the UN. But my all-time favorite is how they came out against an exercise in 2015 by Special Operations Command, an operation called the Jade Helm exercise. And the militia opponents, encouraged by RT spin doctors, insinuated that the U.S. military was preparing the groundwork for martial law. So, nope, no martial law occurred with Jade Helm, but that's the, radical militias talking. Here's another example of Russia and their radical militia groups attacking the UN with this UN conspiracy theory. And they put it out over Facebook, came from a malicious site. It was by a Russian author, and it targeted, U.S. ultra-conservatives, and it talked about Brexit and Sarah Palin. Then it hits the anti-UN focus. And if you go to that, website, it's a Russian military think tank. Surprise, surprise. Another one, this is one of my all-time favorites, Veterans Today Network. It's a website for U.S. military veterans and has veterans resources and job postings. So let's dive into this website where a lot of militia groups would get their information. And if you go to Veterans Today, it's all about pro-Russia, pro-Putin stories. It even has pro-Iran stories. Matter of fact, this site is actually created by the Iranians, and it's monitored by folks from Press TV, which is the pro-Iranian, actually it's the Iranian English language press site, and they put stories on here. And so basically they talk about anti-US stuff, anti-Obama, anti-Israel. They advocate conspiracy theories, anti-New World Order. Again, anti-New World Order all has anti-Israel ties to it. You get into Holocaust denial. And this is where the nonsense of the militia conspiracies come from. And the sad fact is that they've been pushing pro-Lebanese Hezbollah terrorist group information on this because a lot of these stories link back to Hezbollah. Now, what's really fascinating is that after Trump recently got into office, this site shifted and it became an anti-Trump site. So it went from being pro-Trump to being anti-Trump. And that's what's dangerous about these countries doing their disinformation, is that they'll let us battle it out on Facebook and they don't care. They will just keep putting the information out that suits their needs. And as long as dumb Americans are going to read this stuff, that is the real danger to our society. And then one of my favorite slides, because this is a typical Tea Party, pro-Putin social media posting. And when I say Tea Party, again, Tea Party is heavily involved with the Three Percenters and the Oath Keepers. They all run in the same crowd. And so you'll see this in all the verbiage they present. They claim to be defending the Constitution. Which they don't. They only care about the Second Amendment. Every other aspect of the Constitution is worthless to them. They have this anti-New World Order agenda, which they propagate the New World Order agenda just to cry about it. They're anti-anything global, so they think Putin is, a man of peace, which he's not. Go ask the Ukrainians about that, or the people that have been poisoned with uranium. They're anti-nuclear for some reason now. Well, because that follows the Russian agenda. They're anti-media. They're anti-Obama. And then they throw in religion there. They invoke a prayer because, again, most of them are fake Christians. So they're going to push a, quote, Christian agenda, even though they are as far from Christian as you can get. And then they'll stick with the anti-U.S. government, that the U.S. government is a tyranny, and they advocate overthrow, and again, anti-Obama. It's all together. And can't help pointing out that this came from Alex Jones, so from his website, at least the picture did. So there you have it. Constitutional Patriots and Russia, a love affair that goes deeper than their love of America.